have two, Jack Long and Tom Kabbalah. Very different, but equally interesting. And Jack is going to go first, and I think probably of all the works in the exhibition, Jack's work has caused more people to say, how does he do that? How does he take those photographs? Like, all of us see is with beauty. I mean, it's so sculpted. That splash is so sculpted. So you are going to find out tonight from Jack just exactly how he does that. So, without any further ado, please join me in welcoming Jack, and then when Jack is done, I will introduce Tom. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'd like to first put to rest any rumors that I will be disclosing exactly how I do what I do. With all due respects, I will kind of skirt around the question as much as I possibly can without giving away too much. What you see primarily are fountains. I call myself a fountaineer, along with photographer, liquid photographer, high-speed photographer. But everything is photography, it's pure photography, it's not Photoshop aided in beyond the fact that I just use Photoshop for cleaning up a little bit and for printing. So I would like to go into my prepared remarks, and then I'll move forward through the images that pertain to what I'm saying, but at the end there'll be a lot more images. So, if I may, many of you, I think most of you, may not have been familiar with me and my work until recently. And I deeply appreciate that you have come out tonight. I am fairly new to the local art scene. Therefore, I would like to share some of the events and personal experience that have led me to this point in my art career. I believe everyone's work, whether artist or other avocation might choose, is a direct result of who they are as people and experiences they bring to the work, both nature and nurture. I have been an artist, photographer for all my adult life. Most of that time has been as an advertising photographer. I've always loved photography, and it has been a privilege to earn a living doing what I love. Growing up in a working class neighborhood, we had mechanics and tradesmen as neighbors and friends. Someone was always rebuilding a car or adding on to their home to accommodate a growing family. That do-it-yourself attitude was instilled in me in an early age. I have maintained that same attitude on into my career as a photographer. I modify and repair some photographic equipment, and I build the fountains and sets required to create my liquid-based photography images. Advertising photography requires a vast range of skills and experience. Without this experience, creating this body of work would not have been possible. My liquid art is a culmination of a lifetime of artistic exploration. Like most professional photographers, I have done a great amount of what we call personal work. Everything from macro nature and landscape to studio still life studies. I even spent the summer doing the art fair circuit, carrying my work around and setting up my tent in all kinds of weather, in fields, parks, small town streets. I soon realized that the work, while being well received, lacked a focus, a niche, a style. There was one piece, however, which was rather popular and actually related to my commercial work. I'm gonna hold this if you don't mind, if I can get it. Sorry. I'm kind of in and out there. Okay, I'll do this. There was one piece, however, which was rather popular and actually related to my commercial work, my jumping martini. Always attracted attention and some sales. I decided to concentrate on that technique as a series. This work was the first of which the question, how, started coming up. At that time, I deferred from answering these inquiries. I had reasons for not answering the question. Primarily, my motivation was to emphasize the wow rather than the how. That and the people asking were primarily other photographers and had no interest in actually purchasing the image. I continued to work on other variations of these anti-gravity images and ways of improving the mechanics, as well as learning more about high-speed photography and the ability to freeze the motion with electronic flash. A few years ago, I was talking to a colleague about these beverage images. He suggested that we work together on a test image that would shoot water at the product. While this is considered a more traditional splash image, we went ahead and made plans to work together. I already had much of the technical background laid. I then set about constructing a water delivery device that could be actuated without needing additional people to assist and being able to keep the splash moderately controlled. I can hit that. When I completed and tested my first splash-producing fountain, I immediately saw the potential in refining this plume of water as photographic art. Like with the martinis, instead of explaining the mechanics, I'd prefer to discuss the excitement I felt when I saw that first formation and the thrill I got when I was able to capture it photographically. I was captivated by the textures, the clarity, the colors, and of course discovering the shapes that could be made with the variety of influences that affect the forms. I was encouraged by early favorable responses I received on photo sharing sites and among fellow photographers. When early works were published in some online blogs, the work took on a larger presence as they were shared and reshared among other bloggers, both art, photography, and general interest sites. This early taste of viral sharing was both exhilarating and frustrating. Many bloggers would write a note and request permission to post the images, while others would just copy and paste. I could have tried to chase them down and demand a takedown. However, I felt that as long as my name was still attached, any PR is good PR. This early success encouraged me to continue to look at the work more seriously as an art form rather than photographic experimentation. I joined the local art photography group in order to be part of exhibition opportunities. I began to submit to regional and national competitions and juried exhibitions. While the results were mixed, there were some promising successes, including being awarded Juror's Choice at an exhibition in a gallery in Vermont. I'll get to this. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself on the slides. Along with the positive comments came the detractors, and those who either would not believe that I was capturing liquids in aerial suspension in one exposure, that it was some kind of composition of many smaller splashes put together in Photoshop. More confusing to me was that I was some kind of master sculptor in wax or glass, painstakingly constructing these intricate sculptures in order to fool everyone into believing that it was actually liquid. For me, the art is in the concept, the preparation, the execution of these sometimes complicated compositions within a single exposure. I hate fixing photographs in Photoshop, and most of all, my sculpting abilities are nowhere near that good. Coming from the era before digital capture and manipulation, film was the medium of image capture. Most frequently, a positive transparency was used for separations and ultimately the printed page. There was no room for error. Right around the time I began to concentrate on this work, I had what could be described as serious health issues. Being told that I was expected to survive not beyond the next 2 years is pretty tough to take. That was 4 years ago. And despite recent unrelated major medical event, I am pleased to report that I'm looking forward beyond abstract time limits. During this time, I had a strong desire to create. There was a sort of obsessive single-mindedness to refine and finesse the quality and impact of the work. I had always desired to express myself creatively through my art and to make gallery-level art and to share with anyone who would take the time to commune. I have no way of knowing whether that health scare made the process more urgent or not. I feel that although I had discovered this new way of working and knowing that I had something I could really sink my creative teeth into, that I would likely still have worked as hard. I think most of us artists have those times when the ideas are coming faster than we can keep up with the work. So that's what I did. I kept at the work, exhibiting, refining, and seeking critique where available. Not all early showings were completely positive, but there were those who saw and understood what I was doing and provided encouragement to keep me going. Many were my fellow photographers, some I had known for years, and some I had just recently met. Their words and advice have been invaluable to my continuation and advancement. My fellow photographers at COPA and my fellow members here from the Cedarburg Artist Guild have been friendly, supportive, and welcoming. So a logical question would be, where to from here? Ideally, I would love to be able to sell more of the work I have in order to continue to finance new, more advanced projects. I know that is a challenge many artists face. I see many people out there who call themselves consultants who will gladly take your money and give you a one-size-fits-all formula for success. Much of the information is actually available in books without charge on online forums or just by talking to other fellow artists. What may be needed sometime is a more custom approach. Personal consultants and portfolio reviews require substantial investment. So I'm back to needing to sell more pieces I have. The old chicken and egg dilemma. Representation by a gallery within which my work would be well received and sold is also a goal I share with many artists. I understand the challenges involved in securing representation. One thing I've learned is to seek galleries that show similar works. Considering that my work is so unique, that can be a challenge in itself. My hope is, of course, that the uniqueness and quality of the work will indeed attract gallerists, curators, and of course, customers. It has been a huge honor to be asked to speak to you tonight, and I want to thank everyone from Cedarburg Artist Guild and the Museum of Wisconsin Art. Thank you. Now I will just speak through the images as I have them. On the left is one of the elements that I created, which is essentially another fountain, but this is a recirculating fountain that is a sheet of water that continually flows, and I essentially made it to be a background for another piece, but once I discovered how wonderful this wall of water was, I started to play with it, and I built a catapult and shot paint through the wall of water as it went. And so I'm not afraid to take a diverse step to go, let's explore over here for a while and see what happens. So this is kind of what I call my extrusion series. And if you'd like, I have some high-speed video, if it doesn't take us too long. This was done during a session in which I was fortunate enough to have a high-speed video camera brought to Milwaukee from New Jersey so that I could explore what I do through high-speed video. Stand where I go, okay. This is these are the pieces of which that water background was the background that I made that wall of water for. I mean, it was just another element, but I went and had some fun with it. This would be a double series where I have two plumes instead of just one single plume. I decided to see if I can get 2 to go at once, just going a little more complicated, a little more aesthetic with it as I go. And then I said, well, let's do 3, and I had this idea of making this kind of ethereal swamp that was essentially all silver with just a little hit of color, a little heat from underneath, a little lit from underneath. This would be what I call my Silver Swamp series. This is the only pieces that I actually built this kind of a complicated set with that has kind of a sense of place. I'd like to do maybe, in addition to this, I just haven't come up with the idea that I want to put that much work into yet to proceed. I went into doing just a little coffee cup thing and exploring the kind of shapes that I could get coming up out of just a simple coffee cup, kind of playing with the eyes, a little trick there, and I was exploring the shapes that you could get by hitting it with air or doing different levels and that sort of thing. This is another high-speed video. This essentially tells you what's happening during the process. That would be where I take the picture. It's called Coffee Rose. And then the whole thing just falls apart and splashes all over the table. Get in the window. And then I went further. I wanted to see just how much I could torque these shapes. These little fountains are just little shoots of water that come up. And I was adding dyes and adding paints and hitting them from above with drops and air and just seeing what kinds of crazy stuff I could do. And my goal was essentially to make real facsimiles of flowers, because I had already created the vase. The vase on the left is a cone of water, a fountain, a charged cone of water coming up from below the surface. And I already had made the vase, and I said, okay, I got to figure out how to make flowers now. So I did the flowers after making, and then I put the 2 together. That was the spring of 2012 that I decided to do my Vessels in Bloom series, which the piece that is in this show is a part of. I started out fairly simple, just to get the timing right, and got different results. The one on the left I call Cobra in a Basket, and the other one on the right is Cauldron. So not everything always turned out to be a flower, but sometimes you got happy accidents. But still with the basic vase in the central floral form. And then, okay, let's add the leaves too, right? So I've not enough going on already. I started with this setup with the wallpaper background. Got a few good results out of it. Felt that was a little distracting, but still successful. I was able to get 2 leaves, a flower, and a vase, and then with bringing in the daffodils, it gave a sense of scale. So you can really tell these are real daffodils. You can tell that these are pretty sizable pieces of liquid suspended in midair. And then I decided to go what I think my Flemish floral still lifes. You know, I wanted that kind of that Danish light coming in the side and the kind of sense of place. And so the one on the left, water lily, is very popular. And the one on the right is just another variation. So you can see that the one on the right has more of a clarity to the vase, so you can actually see through the elements that are in there. This was a very successful series for me. I've got a few minutes left. I'm going to skip this. Come back After doing the floral stuff and how popular it was, I wanted to kind of like get away from it in a way. I wanted to push the limits and see what I could do that was, you know, just a little further up there, a little more creative, a little more kind of cool looking. So I also introduced an electronic timing device so that I could time the events of each of the pieces that were involved. Essentially, I have a center fountain, the vase fountain, a back fan fountain, and drops coming down from it. And I can time each of those so that the event happens at just the right moment, and the camera automatically photographs the image rather than trying to do it by hand. And I always push a little further to see how much more I can get out of it before I move on to another test, another series. The one on the left is called Alien Flower, and the one on the right is Flavor of the Day. And like I said, keep pushing it. My Inner Earth series, using different atmospherics such as smoke or another fountain that just drops a little sheet of water behind, using different effects, and just experimenting, but still working to make a high quality image as possible. And then I moved on to the gallery series. Now, the gallery series was created out of response to the comments that I received that a lot of people felt that this was actually a glass sculpture. That as one person said, physics, it makes it impossible for you to do what you do. And I'm like, physics is exactly what makes it possible for me to do what I do. So I did this pedestal thing with the room set, trying to make it seem like a little bit of a gallery sort of situation. And I had some pretty good fun with that. I also shot these with 2 cameras at the same time and made 3D pictures. I don't have any of those here because I don't want to challenge you. But at some point I'm going to break out the 3D pictures and the glasses and the monitor, and they're really cool to look at in 3 dimensions. It's really neat. But, you know, I take every idea and see how far I can push it. I changed the pedestal, changed the background, did some different variations, made more complicated double vase rather than just a single vase. Changed colors in the background. It's always a process for me that I'll get where I wanted to go initially, and then I'll continue to push it and push it and push it until I feel like I've worked it as far as I can possibly work it. And this is where essentially the gallery series was finished on these pieces here. And for a little behind the scenes, it's very short. You don't need the sound, so it's just the action. And that's it. That's how fast it happens. Thank goodness the flash happens fast enough. Then this piece that I have displayed, this was, I had the idea of looking at other imagery that I'd seen, that I wanted to create a cave, and I wanted to put like the little shapes and mushrooms in the caves, and I was going to make this cave out of wood and plaster and plastic and all kinds of stuff, and I thought, why don't I just make it out of water? Easily said. So I went to work creating a water cave, which is essentially a continuous fountain, which is an arc. It's a ribbon fountain that's just essentially an arc of water which I could then shoot through and create different little characters on the inside. And everything is done in one shot. Everything is water. The foreground is water. It's another little gurgling fountain that makes my little stone formations, and so there's even water in the background on this one. And I'll skip that. There was another idea I wanted to do. I wanted to put this fountain in, I wanted to go out into nature with it. I'd done some outdoor stuff on a larger scale. And I'm fortunate to live on, along the Milwaukee River, so it wasn't that tough for me to just put everything in the canoe, but I had to build a fairly large fountain structure and set it just below the water surface and discharge it from a distance and then trigger the camera at the same time. And so these are actually quite large formations, up to 3 feet high, as compared to some of the smaller pieces that I have. And it's about 1.5 liters of water suspended in the air at the time. The one on the right is from this year. Tested some other lighting and another background idea on that. That's too long. One study I did is I went back to my flowing sheet of water. Instead of having it in the background, I put it in the foreground. I used it as a chimera as such, and shot through it, but not only shot through it, but had the forms that I had coming up interact with that flowing sheet, so it would shear the form off as it hit that flowing sheet of water. And it's moving, you know, whatever speed that is, it's moving pretty quick. And so the timing on that was fairly critical. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to punch a hole in that flowing sheet of water and then have a formation in that opening. And this is what I call the Hole in the Wall series. That was a lot of fun, and I actually want to explore this a little bit more. I think that flowing wall of water has so many capabilities of adding pigment and adding texture to it. So I did experiment with glass beads and colored lights, micro beads, very small beads. Then I thought I'd be crazy enough to play with fire and wanted just a small ball of fire, and did my research before I actually created it, but I was able to combine the fire and the liquid moving together. And so this is my most recent endeavors. So, the future is a spinning fountain. These are just the first tests of a fountain that is actually spinning at fairly good resolutions, and then I shoot it up so everything is torquing and twisting as it's going up. I've yet to begin to see where that's going to lead me. I think I'll probably add some fire to it. That'll be a lot of fun. Thank you very much. That's the end of my slides presentation. Talked about doing the questions right away, but if we're running for time.
No, questions would be perfect because Tom, you've got to pick up your computer, Tom, so while Tom's picking up his computer, if you have any questions for Jack. But thanks again to Jack. Even though I didn't give away the trade secrets, we're all impressed by what we've seen. So, if there are any questions for Jack?
Yes, thank you.
Jack, I'm just thinking about sort of major corporations and as they're designing, corporate headquarters, new buildings, and that kind of thing. So many of them have fountains, and and they're expensive. They're expensive to put in. They're expensive to maintain. They can be environmental problems if they're not properly maintained. I just wondered if there might be a market for creating the illusion of fountains in some way in corporate structures, in new architecture.
I haven't really thought to that extent. I've been concentrating on creating photographs of fountains in my own little controlled way. I suppose I could make some big fountains, but then still dealing with essentially the same issues that
Sometimes
the
there be
basic
videos of fountains, but not actually, but in some ways more interesting.
I'm certainly willing to speak to anybody who's got some ideas. I haven't really gone there with my thought process. I can't answer that.
One of to play off that, I mean, I'm sure you're shooting these things at very high resolution.
Yeah.
You know, with the way that photographs can be blown up nowadays, I mean, scale might not be that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I certainly use my work as corporate art. Be, happy to sell them large prints, but as far as the illusion of the fountain, yeah, perhaps with the 3D technology that I'm working on, you could have a video that's running and, it may look a little blurry when you look at it, but you give people a pair of glasses and you've got this video presentation that's going that is essentially a continuous loop of more intricate formation fountains that I do. And that would be an interesting, I think, a very interesting visual piece. Just got to talk to the people in New Jersey, have them send me a couple of cameras. Do it in high speed if you want it. It would be great fun. Anyone else?
Are all your liquids water-based?
Yes. Primarily water-based. I work to make them as environmentally friendly as possible. Even the work I do in the river, I'm using dyes that are either food dyes or what they call tracer dyes that are used in finding a leak so they're biodegradable and that sort of thing. I very rarely will use like an oil base to give us like a skin over the top. Some of them won't let that. I'll be very careful and I don't just dump that out. I'll let that, dispose of that properly. I'm very conscious about that. But yeah, water thickeners and other various little additions that make it more elastic. I make 5-gallon buckets at a time and I call it liquid bubble gum because it's so elastic and has a thickness to it and has a stretchiness to it that you can push those limits and get those shapes out of it a little easier before it falls apart on you. That it? Yes, please.
If not asking you to give away trade secrets, what sort of flash duration do you
The flash duration is exactly what I deal with, and that's the time that the flash goes from on to off. And generally the best flash duration starts at about 1/7,000 to 1/8,000 of a second. Frequently about 1/10,000 of a second will stop droplets that are moving pretty well. So that's an equivalent shutter speed if you want to think about it that way. But the shutter essentially opens only for the time that's needed for the flash to go off. So yeah, flash duration is pivotal to it. And I use a number of different flashes that achieve that.
You want to meet your cleanup crew.
It's a squeegee. I work in my garage and yeah.
I personally would like to see more 3D with that.
I think it's pretty great. I get an opportunity sometime to do a show. I would look forward to getting that monitor and setting that up because it's pretty neat to look at. I can direct you to a site that has 3D images, and what you do is it's what they call free viewing, cross view, where you get two images next to each other, much like I had here, but they're essentially the same image from a different angle. And your right eye looks at the left image, and your left eye looks at the right image, and you bring them together in the middle, and your brain actually makes a 3D image out of it. It's really an awesome thing to do. But you can do other 3D images. You can do it with the red and blue glasses, or you can do it with the polarized glasses, or with the active matrix glasses that the 3D gamers use special monitors. And so it's an active